Well, hello, everyone. My name is Shinya Goto, and I'm currently the Superintendent of El Camino Real District. Just in a few weeks, I'm going to be moving to Sacramento, and I'm going to be the Superintendent of Los Rios District, following my good friend, Skylar Rose. Just thinking about the move that I have. For those of you who are moving to new church, new location, I feel for you. This is a very difficult time to be moving right now. My family just started packing recently, and what makes it extremely difficult is you can't donate things right now. Salvation Army, Goodwill, none of the places taking donations right now. In my neighborhood of San Jose, we have a system of exchanging books called a community library. Maybe you have that in your community as well. And what it looks like to me is a large birdhouse with a door. I don't know if that's a good description, but that's what it looks like to me. And you get to bring books that you want to get rid of and place them inside that structure. And when other community members come by, if they see a book that they want to get rid of, or that they want to take, they get to take it for free. And so it's a great system of exchanging books. And my wife and I have been dropping books there because we have so many books that we need to get rid of. A lot of you know my wife. She's a clergy person in our annual conference. Her name is Jennifer. And she has been emailing as well to our neighbors with a list of all the things that she wants to get rid of. And every now and then I have to check in just to make sure that she's not getting rid of my things. But maybe some of you have come up with a way to get rid of things. And if you have, I would love to hear them. And so moving is very difficult. Getting rid of things is very difficult. Packing is busy work. But maybe the most difficult part of moving is saying goodbyes. My family has lived here in San Jose for 8 years. It's a long time, and we have made many good friends. And I know that it's going to be very difficult to say goodbyes. And what makes me sad is that we have a 15-year-old and a 9-year-old, and they're not going to be able to say goodbye to their friends and teachers in person. And I think that is very unfortunate. And I know that that's a challenge that is shared by so many people around the world right now. Now, if you look at the lectionary for this Sunday, the reading is John chapter 17. And it is called the farewell prayer. The farewell prayer. Jesus says goodbye to his disciples because he's about to face the cross. Now, if you recall, in Gospel of John, the Last Supper is followed by the incredible scene of foot washing. I know that in our annual conference, we have a tradition of Bishop washing the feet of ordinands, and it's an incredible scene, the beautiful scene of servitude. And that happens in John chapter 13, and from the middle of chapter 13 all the way to the end of chapter 16, Jesus preaches to his disciples, and that sermon is called Farewell Discourse. And so it starts out with Last Supper, and it goes into foot washing, and then Jesus preaches, and then right before Jesus is arrested, he prays this beautiful prayer for his disciples. And that prayer is called the farewell prayer. And it's the longest prayer that Jesus prays in all of the Gospels. And I know that lectionary reading is John chapter 17, verses 1 through 11. But actually, the prayer continues on until verse 26. And verse 11 is a strange place to end the reading, because it's very difficult to end the prayer of Jesus in half. The cut it in half. And so my suggestion is that you incorporate the entire prayer. All right, so this prayer begins in a dramatic fashion. Jesus ends his sermon, the farewell discourse, and then he looks up to heaven and he says, Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son so that the Son may glorify you. Jesus is saying, I'm about to face the cross. May this be the time to reveal your goodness. May this be the time to reveal your glory. Now, throughout the life of Jesus, we have seen some parts of Jesus that are very human-like, the human side of Jesus, where we have felt closer to him. And then we have also seen the parts of Jesus that is very divine. And my take is that as we move closer and closer and closer to the cross and the resurrection, the gap between the human side and the divine side widens. Here's an example. Luke chapter 22, verse 42, Jesus prays the famous prayer. He's in Mount of Olives. You've heard this prayer. Jesus says, Father, if you're willing, take this cup from me, and yet not my will, your will be done. You've heard this prayer. Jesus is being faithful, but clearly he's struggling with the cross. But if you look at the John chapter 17, there is no struggle for facing the cross. Jesus is even looking forward to the cross. There's no mentioning of even a glimpse of doubt on Jesus' part. And he goes through the crucifixion, and at the very end, before he takes his last breath, Jesus said, it is finished. It's very divine. And it's important to keep in mind that the main message that John is trying to convey is the oneness of Jesus and God, the unity, the consistency between Jesus and God. And that's what we see throughout the Gospel of John. But here in the farewell prayer, Jesus actually takes an unexpected turn. Cynthia Freeman is a layperson who writes articles for the United Methodist Church, theological articles. And she has also written articles for PCUSA denomination. And I love what she says, how she describes the farewell prayer. She says this about the farewell prayer. She says the farewell prayer is a window. It's a window through which we get to gaze into the depth of Jesus' own heart. We get to see what Jesus really, really wants. I think it's right on. And we begin to see that in verse 11 of the farewell prayer, where Jesus says, protect them, the disciples, in your name that you have given me, so that they, the disciples, may be one as we are one. The oneness that Jesus describes the disciples is not just among themselves. Jesus is inviting the disciples to be one with him and God. And so earlier, the oneness was just Jesus and God. But now, Jesus extends the oneness to include all of the disciples. And so this relationship of oneness, there's one side that is horizontal with all the disciples. And then there's the relationship of vertical oneness, where we see the Father and the Son and all of the disciples, the vertical and the horizontal relationship of oneness. But Jesus doesn't end there. He goes even further. The oneness is not just for the disciples, but also for all the people who will come to believe in the future. Jesus says this in verse 20, I ask not only on behalf of these disciples, but also on behalf of those who will believe me through their word. Those who will believe me through their word. Jesus is talking about all the believers that came after the first generation of disciples. He's talking about you and me. He's talking about all the people who will come after our time. And Jesus says in verse 21, as you, Father, are in me and I am in you, may they, all the believers, may they also be in us. And Jesus is establishing the vertical relationship of the Father and the Son and of all the believers, not just the disciples, but all the believers, past, present, and future. And then in verse 23, Jesus establishes the horizontal relationship. I in them, you and me, that they, all the believers, may become completely one. The horizontal relationship of all the believers, that they may become completely one. The word completely in Greek is teteleo menoi, which means to be perfected or made perfect. In another translation of the Bible, completely one is translated as perfected in unity. And from the word teteleo menoi, we get the Greek word telio, which means the end. And so Jesus is talking about the end. This is what he wants to see at the end. And the Message translation captures this so well. According to the Message translation, this is verse 23. The goal, the end, is for all of them, all the believers, to become one heart and one mind. And so deep in Jesus's heart is a yearning that one day all the believers will become one, just as they are one with Jesus and the Father. And so that's the farewell prayer. But as I hear that, I can't help but to wonder, are we completely one? Are we perfected in unity? If we just take one look at the history of the United Methodist Church, you know that we've struggled with slavery. There was a period of time when African American members were not welcome to be with the rest, one with the rest. There was a period of time when Japanese Americans were not welcome to be one with the rest, and so on and so forth. Women were not ordained until much, much later. And the denomination is about to go through a split. The church has always been divided. If you think about the famous quote by Martin Luther King Jr., who said that 11 o'clock on Sunday morning is the most segregated hour in America. And he said that 60 years ago, and it is still true today. And so if our church is truly one, if all the believers are truly one, there's not going to be Caucasian churches and ethnic minority churches. There's not going to be wealthy churches and poor churches. There's not going to be conservative churches and progressive churches. Maybe we are far from being completely one. Maybe we are far from being perfected in unity and love. Earlier in the farewell discourse, when Jesus was preaching, he said this. He said, love one another as I have loved you. And so you know that love is the glue that brings people together, that unites the believers, the church together. When coronavirus started in El Camino Real district, we sent out a questionnaire to the district asking people if they needed help in any way. And we thought that the help that's needed is for grocery shopping. But it turned out that the biggest need that the people had was for those without visas, those who were undocumented, who lost their job and they're not receiving support from the government. They're having a hard time meeting their basic needs. And we ended up receiving requests from 121 undocumented families for a total of 485 people. And that included 253 children. One request came from an 80-year-old woman from Mexico. Her husband is in a wheelchair and he's unable to work. And he's 82. And the two of them came to the US many, many decades ago. But they still don't have a visa. She used to take a 5:30 bus in the morning from San Jose to Milpitas, which takes about an hour. In Milpitas, she cleaned houses 3 times a week for a living. And about a year ago, her neighbor invited her to come to United Methodist Church, and she did, and she loved it, and she became a member. Her pastor sent in this request for her because since coronavirus started, she lost her job. She has no job, no income, and she's struggling. So all 121 families had similar stories of struggle. They're not sure how they're going to find money to meet their basic needs. And so our district decided to raise $50,000 to offer an average of $400 per family, depending on the size of the family. And the fundraiser started 2 weeks ago. And to be honest, I wasn't sure how we are going to meet our goal of $50,000. But when the fundraiser started, people started to give. So many people started to give. And just in 2 weeks, we have exceeded our goal amount of $50,000. We have received $57,000, and people are still giving to this day. And it's not just money. People are calling me to offer prayers for these families. So there's incredible love and support that I'm seeing right now. The night before the campaign started, I spent the whole day writing the letter because I wanted this letter to be good. I wanted people to believe in this campaign. And then so I spent a whole day writing the letter, draft after draft. And normally I spend a lot of time with my children home, but that day I did not get to spend any time with my children. But I did get to put my daughter to bed that night, my 9-year-old daughter, Raina. And as I was tucking her in, she said, Daddy, you are busy. Is everything okay? I said, well, there are so many people that are struggling without a visa, without a job, and there's no support for them, and they're struggling to put food on the table. And my daughter heard that, and she became completely quiet. She didn't say a word. She didn't even say good night. And so I worried that maybe I scared her. And so after that, every half an hour or so, I would go into her room and to make sure that she was okay. And she eventually fell asleep. And early next morning, she came up to me and said, Daddy, this one here, this is for you. I said, what is this? It was a box. It was a heavy box, and I opened it, and there was money in it. And I asked her, what is it for? And she said, it's to help the people that you were talking about last night. And I counted the money that she had, and there was a $20 bill and a huge stack of change. And I counted it all up, and there was $23.54 in 1 yen. I don't know what I'm going to do with that 1 yen. But this is all the money that she had, and she wanted to give it to the people who are struggling. I know that this is not the only effort that is going on right now. There are all kinds of efforts to help people throughout the annual conference. I know that the Bay District is giving $100,000 to help homeless people. And I know that the churches and people throughout the annual conference are helping one another. I'm seeing this incredible outpouring of love right now. And so here's what I think. Maybe we are still far from being perfected in unity. Maybe we are far from becoming completely one. But here's what I think. I think we're taking steps to get there. That's what I believe.